I never expected a simple act of kindness would change both our lives forever. As I watched Sarah pack her belongings into cardboard boxes, tears streaming down her face, something inside me broke. That moment, offering my spare room to a virtual stranger, would lead to a friendship deeper than family, a business partnership that would thrive against all odds, and eventually, a love story neither of us saw coming. If you've ever wondered whether one decision can completely transform your life, stick around until the end. And if this story touches your heart, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel for more real-life stories that remind us of the power of human connection. My name is Michael Chen, and until 3 years ago, I was just another overworked software developer living alone in apartment 4B of Oakwood Heights. I knew my neighbors by face, not by name, a quick nod in the elevator, maybe a good morning if I was feeling particularly sociable. That's how it is in big cities. We live stacked on top of each other yet remain strangers. Sarah Jenkins lived in 4C, directly across the hall. I'd seen her around, a woman about my age with curly brown hair who always seemed to be rushing somewhere. We'd exchanged pleasantries maybe a dozen times in the 2 years we'd been neighbors. I knew she worked long hours at some downtown marketing firm, and she probably knew I existed only as the quiet Asian guy who gets a lot of takeout. That all changed on a rainy Tuesday in October. I was coming home from work, drenched from the unexpected downpour, when I noticed a small crowd gathered in the hallway. Our building manager, Mr. Peterson, a man whose personality was as gray as his hair, stood with his arms crossed, speaking in that condescending tone he reserved for tenants who caused him trouble. "The notice was delivered 30 days ago, Ms. Jenkins. I'm sorry, but the owner's decision is final. The building is being converted to luxury condos, and all month-to-month tenants must vacate by the end of the week." Sarah stood there, still in her work clothes, looking shell-shocked. "But I've been here for 5 years. I've never been late on rent, not once. There must be something." "I don't make the rules," Peterson cut her off. "The new owners do. And they want you out by Friday." I should have kept walking. Should have unlocked my door, stepped inside, and minded my own business like I always did. But something about the defeated slump of her shoulders stopped me. I'd been there before, not evicted, but alone and overwhelmed in a city that could swallow you whole if you let it. The next few days were a blur of activity across the hall. Sarah had posted on every housing site, called every friend, but in our city's brutal rental market, finding an affordable place in 3 days was impossible. I watched her grow more frantic, making calls in the hallway, her voice cracking with desperation. On Thursday night, the evening before she had to be out, I heard sobbing through our shared wall. It was a sound so raw, so full of fear and hopelessness, that I couldn't ignore it. Before I could talk myself out of it, I was knocking on her door. When she opened it, her eyes were red-rimmed, her apartment a chaos of half-packed boxes. "Sorry, was I being too loud?" she asked, trying to compose herself. "No, I hesitated, suddenly aware of how strange my offer might sound. "I heard you're having trouble finding a place, and I have a spare bedroom. It's small, just an office really, but there's a futon and—" "That's not funny," she cut me off, her voice sharp with hurt. "I know we're not close, but I didn't think you'd make jokes about my situation." I blinked, confused. "I'm not joking. I'm serious. Move in with me, just until you find something permanent." She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "Why would you do that? You barely know me." It was a fair question. Why was I, Michael Chen, notorious introvert and guardian of my personal space, inviting a virtual stranger to live with me? The answer surprised even me. "Because someone did it for me once," I said quietly. "When I first moved to this city, I had nowhere to go. A colleague let me crash on his couch for 3 months. I'd like to pay it forward." She still looked skeptical, so I stepped back. "Look, come see the room. If you hate it or you're uncomfortable with the idea, no hard feelings. But it's better than a shelter or sleeping in your car, right? Reluctantly, she followed me across the hall. My apartment wasn't anything special, a two-bedroom with decent light and furniture that mostly came from IKEA. But it was clean and quiet, and the second bedroom, though small, had enough space for a futon and her essential belongings. I can clear these shelves, I offered, gesturing to my books and computer equipment. And we can put up a curtain for more privacy if you want. Sarah stood in the doorway, arms crossed protectively over her chest. Why aren't you married? She asked abruptly. I laughed, caught off guard by the question. Excuse me? I mean, you seem normal enough. Not a serial killer vibe in sight. So what's wrong with you that you live alone and have a spare room to offer random neighbors? It was such an unexpected question that I answered honestly. Divorced. 3 years ago. She got the house in the suburbs, I got the freedom to live wherever I wanted. I shrugged. Turns out, wherever I wanted was here. Something in my answer seemed to satisfy her. She nodded slowly, then looked around the room again. 1 month, she said finally. I'll pay half the utilities and keep to myself. And I'll be out as soon as I find something else. Deal, I said, extending my hand. She shook it firmly, and just like that, I had a roommate. The first week was awkward, to say the least. We tiptoed around each other like wary cats, establishing unspoken territories and schedules. She left for work before I woke up and often came home after I'd gone to bed. On the rare occasions we were both home, conversation was limited to practical matters. The hot water takes a minute to come on, or, I finished the milk, I'll get more tomorrow. But gradually, almost imperceptibly, things began to change. It started with small gestures. She'd make extra coffee in the morning and leave it in a thermos for me. I'd pick up her favorite snacks when I went grocery shopping. One night, about 2 weeks in, I came home to find her cooking dinner. I hope you like pasta, she said, not looking up from the pot she was stirring. I figured since you've been letting me crash here, the least I could do is make a decent meal. That night, over spaghetti carbonara that was surprisingly good, we had our first real conversation. I learned she'd moved to the city right after college, determined to make it in advertising. She'd worked her way up from assistant to account manager at her firm, but the long hours and high pressure had taken their toll. I love what I do, she admitted, twirling pasta around her fork. But sometimes I wonder if it's worth it. 80-hour weeks, no social life, and now I can't even keep a roof over my head. What would you do if you could do anything? I asked. She looked surprised, as if no one had asked her that question in a long time. Honestly? I'd start my own agency. Something small and focused on helping local businesses, not just chasing corporate accounts. Her eyes lit up as she talked about her vision, and I found myself captivated by her passion. Why don't you? I asked. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Money. Connections. The fact that I'm currently homeless except for the charity of a stranger? Take your pick. Former stranger, I corrected. Current roommate. That made her smile, a real smile that reached her eyes. Fine. Former stranger, current roommate. Still doesn't solve the other problems. Maybe not, I agreed. But problems are just puzzles waiting to be solved. She rolled her eyes at my optimism, but the ice was broken. From that night on, we started having dinner together whenever our schedules aligned. I learned she had a younger brother with special needs who lived with their parents in Ohio, that she volunteered at an animal shelter on Sundays, and that she could recite entire episodes of Friends from memory. She discovered my secret passion for baking, my collection of vintage video games, and my habit of talking to myself when I was deep in coding. We were different in many ways. She was outgoing and creative, I was analytical and reserved, but we found unexpected common ground. A month passed, then 2. Sarah mentioned looking at apartments less and less. I didn't bring it up. The truth was, I'd grown accustomed to having her around. My once quiet apartment now filled with the sounds of her laughter, her music, her animated phone calls. The space felt warmer somehow, more like a home than just a place to sleep. Then came the night that changed everything. Sarah came home late, her face pale and drawn. I was on the couch, working on my laptop, but one look at her and I closed it immediately. "What happened?" I asked as she collapsed beside me. "I got laid off," she whispered, her voice hollow. "Budget cuts. They're downsizing the whole department." "Sarah, I'm so sorry." I reached out awkwardly, not sure if I should touch her, but she leaned into me, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "I don't know what I'm going to do," she said when she could speak again. "I can't stay here now, I won't be able to contribute anything. And finding another job in this market." She trailed off, despair evident in every line of her body. "Hey, look at me," I said, waiting until her tear-filled eyes met mine. "You're not going anywhere. We'll figure this out together." "Why?" she asked, the same question from that first night. "Why do you care what happens to me?" I didn't have a clever answer this time. The truth was simpler and more complicated all at once. "Because you matter to me," I said finally. "Because this place feels more like home with you in it." She stared at me for a long moment, then did something that surprised us both. She leaned forward and kissed me. It was brief, just a gentle press of her lips against mine, but it sent electricity coursing through me. "I'm sorry," she said immediately, pulling back. "I shouldn't have." "Don't apologize," I interrupted. "Unless you regret it." "I don't," she admitted. "But this complicates things, doesn't it?" I laughed softly. "Sarah, things have been complicated since the moment you moved in. We just pretended they weren't." That night marked a turning point. Not just in our relationship, which was evolving into something neither of us had anticipated, but in our individual paths as well. As we talked into the early hours of the morning, an idea began to take shape, one that seemed crazy at first, but grew more plausible the longer we discussed it. "What if," I said cautiously, "we combined our skills? Your marketing expertise, my technical knowledge. You wanted to start your own agency. I've been thinking about freelancing instead of working for someone else." Her eyes widened. "Are you suggesting we start a business together?" "Michael, we've known each other for what, 3 months? Sometimes the best partnerships come from unexpected places," I countered. "Think about it, you understand what clients need, how to reach their audience. I can build the platforms to make it happen. We'd be offering something most agencies can't, integrated marketing and development from the ground up." She was quiet for a long time, considering. "It's a huge risk," she said finally. "So was letting you move in," I pointed out. "That turned out pretty well." The next morning, over coffee and bagels, we made a pact. We'd give ourselves 6 months. Sarah would use her severance package to cover her personal expenses, and I'd keep my day job while we built our business on nights and weekends. If it didn't work out, no hard feelings, we'd go back to our original plan. What followed were the most exhausting and exhilarating months of my life. We converted the living room into a makeshift office, with a whiteboard covering one wall and sticky notes on every surface. Sarah.